Cześć Wam wszystkim, dzięki, że przyszliście. Jestem Kasia Mecinski. Dzisiaj będę robić swoje prelekcje po angielsku, ponieważ chciałam się wysłowić poprawnie i po polsku po prostu brakuje mi za dużo słów, więc będzie po angielsku. Okay, and is English okay? I guess I'm hoping it is, okay? So if there is issues, if you have questions, if you want me to slow down, please let me know. I can also try to say what I want to say in Polish if that needs to happen from time to time. So just let me know. So let's just jump into it. The reason I came up with this topic is because I was talking with my business partner about what I should do, and my problem with talking about things like this is that I don't really know how to explain how I did anything. I just do the things that I do. So that's what I decided to make the topic about today. And it is very broad, and it is kind of cheating because I can talk about anything. Sorry for that if you were expecting something specific. But without further ado, okay, so, oh, and there's little bits of Polish here too, because some things just sound better in Polish, like my channel. So my name is Kasia Mecinski. I have a channel, 50 na pół. I also am the CEO of Tofu Media Japan, and I'm the co-founder of Tofu Media Poland. And in small letters, there's the uwaga pies, because that was a thing I used to do and no one does it anymore. But I decided to put it in here because if you were at yesterday's panel, it came up a few times. So the channel still exists. Nothing happens on it though. So with all that said, you can see it's quite a wide variety of things. Like these are all media related, but very different types of work. Moving on. Okay, so as someone with a YouTube channel and having the companies that I do have, I get asked a lot of questions related to those. Like, how do I start a YouTube channel? How do I start a company? Jak się wybić na internecie? That just sounds better than how do I get famous on the internet? How did you find the courage to move to another country? That's a question I get a lot. And all these things were just really baffling for me because they just, I mean, why not? Why not do these things? I always wanted to move to Japan, so that to me was like no bigger of a risk, no bigger of a challenge to undertake than becoming an accountant or becoming an advertiser. It was just a step in life that I knew I wanted to take. But anyway, my answers to these questions are, how did I start a channel? I just started it. So I used to appear on Chris's channel a lot more, and that's where I realized that there just was an interest. Chris is my business partner, Krzysztof Gonciarz. That's who I'm speaking about. I realized there was an interest in my personality, that there was or maybe less my personality, the perspective on life that I can deliver to a Polish audience, because there were questions about like, hey, what was your high school like? Why do you have white teeth? What did you do for Halloween? Why do you have white teeth? Very popular question. So that prompted me to decide to start a channel. And when I first had this idea, I didn't have any real plan other than I knew I can answer some of these questions, and I knew there are things I wanted to talk about, so let's see how this goes. And the actual like process of starting the channel was very relaxed. I would even venture to say lazy. I think I opened my channel August, July maybe? It was like 3 months before doing anything on the channel. I just decided that I liked the name and I started the channel. Then one day I was playing in Photoshop with a photo that my friend took of me, which became my banner. It wasn't like I set out to make the banner. I just at some point thought, oh, this is funny. That's going to be my banner. And the second question, jak się wybić na internecie? I really have no idea. If someone knows, please let me know. Sometimes with this question, as someone who does YouTube part-time, everything that I do is based on how I feel or my intuition. And so with this question, there are videos that I'm convinced will be popular, that I'm convinced everyone wants to see, that get very little views. And then there are videos that just happen to have a really good thumbnail and a great title that just clicked well. And however, I feel that the content is completely subpar that do really well. So if anyone has a consistent recipe for achieving success, please let me know, because I'm still working on that one. And then the third one, and this is what I'm going to be talking about the most here, is moving, or not specifically moving to Japan, but the process behind it was just like everything else in life, it was a calculated risk, and I made the decision based on whether I can handle that risk. So with Japan, let me just check my notes because I had a good comparison here. Japan, compared to starting a channel, was a very calculated risk because I had a few things to consider. With my channel, if it was a total waste of my time, that's all I really lost was my time. And that was something that I was willing and able to give up in an effort to have a channel. Moving to Japan, however, involved taking a risk on time and money. And the time was a different risk than starting a channel in that I had to make some type of commitment before I could decide that this isn't working. With the channel, I could have just been like, oh, this isn't working, time to give up on it. With Japan, however, I knew I had to commit at least a year, about a year of time to make it happen. 4 to 6 months to send applications. I had money saved up to make the move. However, once I arrived in Japan, all that money was spent to get to Japan, which meant that I had to spend the next 4 months, if I hated it, to make all that money back to get back from Japan. That's how I calculated that risk. When receiving this question, though, it always baffled me because that's really not that big of a risk, 1 year of time. Why don't we ask, for example, lawyers how they found the courage to become lawyers, or parents? That's crazy. Parents put in 18 years at least, plus the time to get pregnant. And I didn't think that through. I had to make sure that didn't sound bad. And way more money, way more time into parenting than I ever considered into moving to Japan. What I think is interesting here is that simply because it's maybe not the most popular decision, we perceive it as a much bigger risk than everything else in life. In reality, it was one of the smaller risks I took, one of the smaller risks I probably will take in life, but I get asked about the courage behind moving to Japan so often. Okay, so because this is an influencer conference, let's talk about starting a YouTube channel, starting a blog, starting a new series on your channel, starting a new series on your podcast, starting a podcast. Let's talk about the things that are relatable to that from what I've already been saying. So when people ask me about how I had the courage to do something, it's usually followed with, I want to start a YouTube channel. I want to start a podcast. What do you think of this podcast idea? What do you think of this YouTube channel idea? And all I have to say is that as someone with a YouTube channel in Polish about mostly American culture, I have no better expertise or knowledge as to the success of the channel than anyone else. If you want to ask me about what I think about a channel that has to do with tiny homes or decorations, then we can talk about that, but that's about all my interests that I have right now. If you have a channel that you want to start about biking, I really have no idea how it's going to do. So what I think that the biggest mistake that people make in starting to do what they want to do is that they spend all their time preparing to do it. And I'm going to say something here that I'll just say. So preparation isn't really doing anything. It's really not doing anything. Preparation is just the adult word for, well, not doing anything and having some excuse for why you haven't done anything. So many people, I have a friend who's been setting up a YouTube channel for 2 years now because he has issues like he doesn't have the proper channel art, he doesn't have the proper photo, he doesn't know if he should have it in Polish or English or in both, or if he should separate the channels. And he's going over these decisions for 2 years now rather than just starting the channel. And so this is the biggest mistake I see from people who want to start channels, I'm mainly talking about channels here because those are the questions I get most frequently. That all the time spent on having a channel is spent in preparing to have a channel. There's a complete lack of fruition. I looked up this word in Polish. Owocowienie? Does not make sense, does it? So anyway, fruition. There's just like a complete lack of results because everyone's spending their time in preparing to do something rather than actually doing it. And I completely understand because we were raised in our school system to see people as potential experts. And then when we become adults ourselves, we just feel that we've never reached that level of expertise because there's this cult of expertise that we believe in that kind of clouds our judgment in everything that we want to do. And so we spend our time preparing to do it because we believe that there are these other people who are more qualified to do things, which is completely not true at all. I'll get to some examples from the things that I do in life to better illustrate that. This one sounds better in Polish. W życiu masz dokładnie tyle, na ile masz odwagi. In English, I said you have as much in life as you allow yourself to have. However, I just like the Polish more. So with everything that I have done, it wasn't because I was necessarily good at it. I am not good at many things. It's because I just thought, if anything else, this will make a good story. And that's kind of how I approach things. I imagine that if I fail at this, at least when I'm like 80 years old and on my rocking chair, I'll have a good story to tell my grandchildren. But more realistically, when people think about not succeeding in something, they think of it in terms of failure, when really it's just a matter of, oh no, that's the wrong one. A matter of having the wrong approach and finding the right approach. So I'll start with an anecdote about how we started our company in Tokyo. This was about 5 years ago. I was 24 years old when I decided to start a company in Tokyo. It was a really naive idea looking back. I mean, I'm really happy that we did it, but there are a lot of ways to look at it now that kind of illustrate the naiveness of the time. So Chris and I decided to start a company because I had business contacts in Japan and Chris had video production experience. About my business contacts, I didn't necessarily have much business experience outside of the 2 companies I worked with in Japan. And Chris's video production experience at the time was just making videos on YouTube. However, we were bold and naive enough to decide, hey, this can potentially work. But we didn't go in full 100% because there are a lot of reasons to have been cautious with starting a company. And those reasons were also a lot of the reasons why we could have just walked away and said no. Primarily, starting a company in Japan is, if you guys watch our content, then you know that Japan is the expert in just bizarre bureaucracy that, well, it's bizarre. So to start a company in Japan 5 years ago, you needed to have a Japanese business partner, basically because in order to start the company, you needed to be in Japan to do all the paperwork. However, you couldn't be in Japan because you didn't have the proper visas, and this kind of forced you to have a Japanese partner, which we didn't have. It was just us 2, me from the States, Chris from Poland. 2, it's really expensive. 3, getting clients in Japan is hard. Another catch-22. To have Japanese clients, they basically want you to have Japanese clients to show that you can work with Japanese clients, but you can't get Japanese clients unless you have Japanese clients, so you're just stuck in that loophole. And then the fourth reason is there were way more qualified people than me to start a company in Japan. So I haven't had experience running a company. I didn't go to business school. I did not speak Japanese. Chris did not speak Japanese. And all the above mentioned things just made it a very difficult time and place to start a company. Let me just catch up on my notes. However, when approaching the idea of starting a company, I did not assume that I will immediately succeed. I just assumed that I wouldn't fail, that even if it didn't work out, I would learn from that and figure out the next approach, learn from that, figure out the next approach. And so instead what I did was calculate how much time I have to figure out what I need to figure out to make the company run based on the amount of money we had, rather than assuming that if I fail the first time, it's not going to work out. So that's how I looked at the resources we had, which was some amount of money that we had to invest and the equipment that we had, and how long that would last us before we had to give up on the idea. And before we went into investing into the company, we had a proof of concept that we went with. So what we did was I think I skipped a slide. We started with the proof of concept, which was setting up a website, getting a domain with our emails, giving ourselves titles, which, like, as a 24-year-old, when you're starting a company, just felt so adult, and making business cards, which is very, very funny in Japan. As soon as you have a business card in Japan, you're seen as a legitimate business person, so that was a huge step for us as well. And then we started a client acquisition campaign, which sounds a lot fancier than it was. It was me sitting in a room, occasionally writing emails to people and seeing if they would respond. So that's how we started. And once we had our first client interested, that's when we decided to move forward with investing our time, not our time. Our time was, we were willing to invest our money to make sure that, like, to risk as little as possible. So I went a little out of order here. I was looking for a quote about failure. There's millions of them on the internet about failing, not being failing, blah, blah, blah. So failure is, this is the one I went with. Failure is an opportunity to learn what doesn't work, said by me. You guys can use that one in the future if you want. So basically what I want to say is have the courage to take a risk on yourself, because in everything that I have done, in everything that we have done, in everything that everyone assumes I did right, the only thing I really did was just assess how much damage I can do before I have to give up on it and whether I can afford that damage. And the only step that, the biggest step I had to make was taking the risk on myself to make it happen. Let me see what the next slide is. Okay. Applying that to YouTube, when you start a YouTube channel, compared to a company or compared to moving to Japan, the only thing you're really risking, if you can edit yourself, if you can come up with the concepts yourselves, is time. So basically, I just want to encourage everyone to take the risk on yourself, because all you're really risking here is your time. And that's, to me, if I were to wonder if I can start a channel and spend the next year starting a channel, what I can do is just start a channel and in a year know whether it worked out or not. And basically that's what I want to encourage everyone to do. And I want to finalize this by saying that a lot of what stops us is the way we evaluate risk and the way we look at the expertise of others. And I hope that with this I illustrated that expertise is just in the eye of the beholder. You believe someone else knows as much as you're willing to give them credit for, so you might as well be giving that credit to yourself. So I hope that this helped to break the mysticism, idealism, cult of expertise surrounding whatever you're hoping or trying to accomplish. And in the end, if anyone has any questions, please let me know. Możecie też pytać po polsku, mogę odpowiadać po polsku, tylko chciałam to przedstawić po angielsku. Pytania? Okay.